Okay, continuing with Ecclesiastes, I went ahead and read the whole book to get that feel of the line. Like I said, Ecclesiastes really needs to be read really by itself. Don't try to draw too much inference from it. Look at what it is. It's almost like a pearl. You look at what it is, not how it compares to something else. But what we have here is an interesting thought, because he begins with, and Solomon seems to do this. He'll start with a premise, then he'll make his statement for it. He'll explore what it is. Then he'll say what the application is. Then he goes back to the beginning. It ends with, let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God shall bring every work into judgment and every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil. And sometimes we as Christians, we tend to get very conclusionary. Okay, I don't have to read this book now. I understand that. Well, you don't. You don't till you've followed his line of thought, till you've seen his reasons, till you've accepted his postulates, till you've seen. I love where he goes back and says things like, I gave myself to mirth, and I gave myself to joy, and I gave myself to sorrow, and I gave myself to plenty. You know, I gave myself to these things, and I'm walking this road so that you might know that there's nothing out there better than to love the work of your labors. And talks with young men to love their wives, to love their lives. That's what I tell my boys and try to tell my daughters. Love the life you have, because if you could have gotten better, you would have. And that's a little bit of what Ecclesiastes is talking about. Again, the chasing of the wind, the chasing of riches, the chasing of a different kind of lifestyle that you think you want. Many times, and he even gets this, where people they'll have the riches and then they want more because they're not satisfied. They'll get the lavish lifestyle, but they want more. They're not satisfied. So we see this lack of satisfaction. And he goes, it's nothing better than for a man than, and he goes over and talks about it. So he states in Ecclesiastes, vanities. He talks about what it is. He talks about how he came to the conclusion of vanities in chapter 2. He talks about there is a season for everything. Life is just not all joy. It's just not all sorrow. It's just not all happy. It's just not all sad. And there's a season for love and a season for hate, a season to lose, a season to gain. Life has these things. He even goes on later on to state that, for men, you don't know if tomorrow's going to be good, tomorrow's going to be bad. Unlike many of the Calvinists that you hear, he does deal with a bit of randomness in life. There is a small point of randomness to where getting sick, getting a flat tire, having something happen to you. But many times for us, when a random thing happens to us, we take it and make it even worse. You know, you have a flat tire and you yell at your wife, and now you've got struggles there, and then the kids are upset. You know, you see what it is, as opposed to have a flat tire. Oh, well, let's see if we can get through this rough patch and move on. Many times we make our life worse by randomness around us. And sometimes the randomness of good things happening, but we lose the promotion, we lose the job. We're not really focused on getting the strongest benefit from this thing that came our way. And God does allow the lot. Remember that the lands of Israel was chosen by lot. Sometimes what happens to you, God can turn it either way. You know, people are almost like, I won't buy a car unless God wants me to pick it. No, learn what a good car is. If you want a Chevy, that's fine. If you want a Ford, that's fine. If you want a Dodge, that's fine. All I care about is you have quality, quality transportation to meet your needs. We get so involved that we think God cares about the color of our shirts or how we comb our hair. And we he's not that kind of micromanaging. There is an area to where I can get you to where I need you to be in any of 3 roads. That's what I tell my kids. Pick a road, if you want to worship him as a pastor, you want to worship him as a bricklayer, you want to worship him, he might guide you through that. You might fail as a pastor and become a bricklayer. You might become a bricklayer and then get into a pastorate. Glorifying God can happen. So we're seeing where Ecclesiastes pulls the average person out of their own self, out of their day-to-day survival cycle, and gets them to think higher thoughts. And this is actually good. The perspective of knowing that what's happening to me happens to every other man and every other woman. There's a case of randomness that goes through life. Even the super rich have their same struggles as the poor. And he talks about this, and he keeps going. He talks about what you can do, like keep your foot when you come out of the house of God and be ready to hear. than to give the sacrifice of fools. If you come out of the house of God, you've got a choice. You can hear and discuss and debate, or you can blather and fight and argue. You have some choice here. Do you want to be wise, or do you want to be a fool? I know that sometimes it's said that, the wise and fool get the same, but the quality of life and honoring God is the best that we can do. If God gives you a chance to have a good life, why not choose to embrace that life? Now, we're not talking about salvation here, but we are talking about sanctification, about showing God good, but having a stronger perspective of why we're living. There's an evil that I've seen under the sun, and it is common among men. He talks about this in 6, and so we covered that. A man to whom God has given riches and wealth and want, but he wanteth nothing for his soul. He has all he desires, yet God has given him not the power to eat it. He has all this stuff, but he can't enjoy it. He's so wrapped up. That's the irony. We pursue God for stuff, and when he gives us to us, we're not happy. In chapter 7, a good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death is better than one's birth. And many times that's true when you're done with this travail. A lot of truth in here. It is better to go to a house of mourning than to the house of feasting. For that is the end of all men, and the living will lay it to his heart. The idea of knowing where you're going to go, having that sense of perspective. Sometimes we think we're going to live forever. You will get more knowledge from what he's saying from a house of mourning than a house of mirth. Mirth can be, it covers everything. It anesthetizes you from the truth of life. And so, sorrow is better than laughter. And again, he's not saying we should walk around sad sacks, but having a somber, stoic understanding of who we are and what we're about. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning. It's better to hear the rebuke of a wise man than the song of fools. Be not hasty in the spirit to be angry, for anger rests in the bosom of fools. So chapter 7 starts to go into how we to live this life, the importance of wisdom. Wisdom is good with an inheritance, and by it is to profit them that see the sun. For wisdom is the defense, and money is the defense, but the excellency of knowledge is that wisdom that giveth life. So you can get stuff, you can get all this stuff, but wisdom is the knowledge of life. In the days of prosperity, be joyful, but in the days of adversity, consider. God has set one against the other, to the end that man should find nothing after him. Yeah, he's saying many of these thoughts are so deep, I could almost do a whole sermon. I feel like I'm doing a little bit of injustice, but I'm trying to touch upon them real quick, because I could stay in each chapter of Ecclesiastes and really focus in on many of these nuggets. But I want you to. I'm trying to give you an example of what's really in these. If anything, these are the chapters we should be dealing with verse by verse, and not Ephesians and Acts and Philippians, which we've gone over 1,000 times. Wisdom strengthens the wise more than 10 mighty men. For there is not a just man upon the earth that doeth good and sinneth not. Again, more serious truth here about men or sinners. But yet, wisdom, being wise, is it's better than 10 strong men. I applied my heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason for things, and to know the wickedness of folly. I find more bitterness than death. The woman whose heart is snares and nets, and her hand are his bands, whoso pleases God shall escape from her. Again, this is similar to the woman that he's discussed in the book of Proverbs. And so we see a lot of truth here on what to look out for. And again, this is like a mini Proverbs from here to the end. We've made our statement of life is vanity. We've made our statement for how he came to those conclusions. And now we're making statements on, still we have an obligation to God to live joyfully, to live before him so that people might see his goodness. But his goodness is not wrapped up in the riches and the power and the wealth and all this stuff. And he's even saying this, I approach this to find meaning in it. And there was no more meaning in that than there was just to be joyful with the work of my hands, to love the wife, and to enjoy my life. Because tomorrow I might not be enjoying my life. All of us have that. We think that having riches will mean you can enjoy your life. And that's not what this is saying. And so talking about this, that even these women, and this is foolishness also, they want to grab you, run and escape. Lo, I have found God hath made man upright, but we have sought out many inventions. He has created man to be upright, but instead of sticking with God, we go and make our own little inventions. When it says inventions in the Bible, it's sometimes just talking about the things that we do, our devices, the things that we do to get us what we want. Instead of sticking with God, we make our own inventions, whether it's a physical thing, whether it's an aesthetic thing, whether it's a philosophical thing. It becomes an invention of our mind, and we lean on that as a postulate for life. And he's saying, God's already given us what we need to be upright, but we make our inventions. Who is the wise man, and who knoweth the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face to shine. I counsel thee to keep the king's commandment, and to regard the oath of God. Be not hasty to go out of his sight. Stand not in an evil thing, for he doeth whatever pleaseth him. We have a God who does what pleases him. Line up. And sometimes it pleases him to chasten. Sometimes it pleases him to have wrath because you're standing against him. Be careful. He's not finding joy in it, but that justice is being allowed. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes we take pleasure and joy. It's the same thing. When a person faces something negative in our court systems, but the court was just, we can take pleasure in the sense that we have a just judgment system, court system. We don't like it that the person had went to jail or whatever happened, but the courts found it to be so. He's talking about this. Where the word of the king is, there is power. Whoever keepeth the commandment shall feel no evil thing, and a wise man's heart discerneth both time and judgment. A word discernment comes to mind when you're looking at judgment. To discern and see what you should do, where you should go, how you should handle, how you should move forward. Fools would just jump right in and start picking emotionally or picking from their own lust and wants and needs instead of looking at it stoically to say, what is best? And that's Ecclesiastes. So he talks about judgment here and how wonderful judgment is. For he knoweth not what shall be, for who can tell him what it shall be? He's talking about man here. There is no man that hath power over the spirit to retain the spirit. All this I have seen and implied to my heart unto every work that is done under the sun. For I saw the wicked buried, and who come and gone out of the holy place, and they were forgotten in the city where they had done so. This is of vanity. He's saying he's seen the wicked in a city die and are buried. He's seen them walking around in the holy place. And he who comes out from the holy place, he's talking about, I've seen the wicked and I've seen the holy buried, and they're all forgotten. Though a sinner to live 100 times and his days be prolonged, yet surely I know that it will be well for them that fear God and fear before him. Your length of days will not make length of goodness. Fearing God and knowing that we are just a shadow, that we are just grass. He's really pulling this out here. I really like that where he says, I've seen the wicked buried, and those who come from the holy place, they are forgotten in the city. Nobody knows their names anymore. They thought they were so great and they did so much, and now they've just moved on. But it shall not be well with the wicked, neither shall he prolong his days, which are as a shadow, because he feared not God. For there is a vanity that I've seen upon the earth, that there shall be just men to whom it happened according to the work of the wicked, and the wicked to whom it happened according to the work of the righteous. Good things happen to the wicked. Bad things happen to the righteous. We have people, again, talking about this philosophical understanding that good will lead to good things. Bad will lead to bad things. He's trying to pull that apart to say, except for worshiping God and the glory that you can give him, good and bad are a lot of the same, because a lot of negatives happen to both, a lot of positives. Good things can happen to the wicked. Bad things can happen to the just. It's not what's happening to us. It's who we are in the equation and what's best. I commended mirth, because a man is no better than under the sun than to eat and drink and be merry. But that shall abide with him, his labor for his days in his life, which God has given him under the sun. Now, this is not the same as to eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow we're going to die. That kind of fatalism is not what this is. Eat, drink, and be merry because you have this day in to live. It's a different thing. It's not a fatalistic, well, I'm going to enjoy myself. No, God has given me this day to live. This is the day that the Lord hath made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. That's similar to this. And I beheld all the work of God that a man cannot find out. even because though a man labor to seek it, he shall not find it out. Though a wise man went to know it, he shall not be able to find it. He's saying that the wisdom of God is so big, it's so long, that you can't see both ends. You can only see snippets of it connected together. Now, I will say that this is also a man to whom we have a little more insight, because all he had was the history and the time of David, and the history up to David. He never knew of Elijah or Elisha. We tend to forget that the guy who wrote this, all he knew was up to David and himself. He didn't know about, all those kings that were coming and all the prophets. He never heard of Jeremiah or Ezekiel or Daniel. He's never heard of Daniel 9. He's never seen all those prophecies, And so from his point of view, we're kind of stuck right here. We're very fortunate, and we have the words of Solomon, but we all have all this other wealth of wisdom. This wealth of wisdom that we can lean upon to know more about this God, this good God, this powerful God of David, who is the father of the preacher. So I don't discount him, but we also have to remember that as a person of his time, his views, as wise as they were a little myopic, because we have more information. Does it change that we are grass? No. Does it change that God is good? No. Even though we have expanded knowledge, we have not raised knowledge. He is still the pinnacle here of perspective. All we did was take knowledge and expand it this way. But until we get to Jesus, who takes it higher than Solomon, of course. But no. You might have more information about God, but you won't have different information about God. You may have more information about man, but you won't have different information about man. You might have different perspective on this, kind of, but you won't have a strong different perspective. Good things happen to good. Good things happen to the bad. Bad things happen to good. Bad things. What is best? Spending your life chasing shadows, spending your life chasing goods. Even Jesus talked about a lot of this stuff. You can almost hear it ringing from here. Talking about the guy who made all of his barns. Tomorrow, your life will be required of you. Here comes judgment. That judgment is coming to the weak and to the strong. And it won't be because, well, I couldn't worship you because I wasn't strong, or I couldn't worship you because I was weak. I couldn't worship you because I didn't have the riches or had too many responsibilities. I couldn't live a joyful life. I think one of the things that if he can say, you lived a joyful life. So finding that joy in what you're doing, in what you want to do, and what you can do. So he does have this, and I beheld all the works that God had done. Man cannot find out the work of God that is done under the sun. We don't live long enough, and we don't have the capacity to understand what God is doing under the sun. We need to trust him for what he has shown us. And he's showing us that the trappings of this world are just that, the traps. So, continuing with Ecclesiastes, but again, very good verses for, again, giving us an idea of wisdom, where it fits in this, and how wise men can play out, but also the fact that judgment is coming for everybody, the wise and the foolish. Even Solomon knew this. It's not just the 21st century thing with Jesus. They knew about judgment then. They knew God was going to judge. And we need to make sure that where we are when God judges and where we sit with God is very, very important. Thank you.